Welcome, friends. Welcome. Welcome to this second evening panel on Wednesday, the 22nd of June. It's day 5 of the 99 Days of Peace through Unity. It's day 5 of World Unity Week. We are honoring the foundation of life that is air today. And I'm very, very excited about this plenary. It's such an important issue. It's such an important topic for everybody around the world. This is the plenary Healing the Divide. Come and UnGUN our hearts with Dr. Marty K. Casey and friends we'll be hearing from soon. Dr. Marty K. Casey has asked us today to start with a short video. So we're going to begin with a short video to begin today.
Someone got killed this past week in Chicago because they stepped on somebody's shoes. But we say life is priceless. Can't be. Was it 2 years ago? Young lady got shot in the Dallas housing authorities because somebody had some on the social media about some rap music. He went to shoot him, shot through the wrong apartment. 8, 9-year-old girl killed. So it can't be priceless, but it's value. And it's our job today to figure out how we get other people to believe and buy in that is value. This panel that you see, they're very diverse. I'm not talking about in race, I'm talking about in experiences. So they're gonna share their experiences, you're gonna share your experience, but this is a safe place. You get to say whatever you want to say with respect. Whatever you want to say, as long as there's some respect to it. So it's important that you take this time and really figure out the impact that you can have on it, that it can have on you, so you can transfer it back to your schools and your community. That's important. So mainly, I want you to learn today that there are people that care. I may say some things you don't like. I'm okay with that. But I'm very intentional about my words. So very seldom do I say something I don't mean. And I ask you to be intentional. So that way you've thought about it before you say it. That way you don't have to walk it back. You can stand on it.
I believe that crime is directly related to tangible opportunities in our community. Right? When I say tangible, I mean, what is an opportunity that I believe that belongs to me that can give value to me? If I give you something if I give you a diamond and you don't know what it is because you think it's a rock, does it really have value? It doesn't have value until you attach the value to it. So what we're doing in growing is a value system where young people can make no more money without taking no more chance. Because nobody wants to take a chance with their life purposefully. They only do so when they believe that there is not another opportunity to be successful.
This is your hurt people. This is your hurt people power. Because you took the extreme of a situation of you really getting down to how do we fix it. Because some of you all stand strong on what you believe in, and that's why we make the decisions we make, because it comes from a belief system. It comes from your experiences. It comes from what you've been through. It comes from your feelings. You can't heal anything you don't feel. And some of us have turned numb to other people's feelings as well as your own. So when you ask the question, how much is a life worth, do you even know how to love? You know what it's like to love? In order to love, sometimes you have to sacrifice first.
At the end of the day, our goal is collectively to present solutions that we can share across the country. So as a collective, we're trying to figure out for me, I'm asking that we try to figure out how to curb senseless violence. And we do that by creating a value for life. Because the things you value, you don't destroy.
Hey, Dr. Marty. Thank you for that. Thank you for that video. And it's great to be with you here. I know we kind of met in World Unity Week back in 2020. So it's very special to be still walking together and working together. Dr. Marty K. Casey. Let me just share a little bit about you before you introduce your panelists today. Dr. Marty K. Casey, performance artist and activist, has procreated and given meaning to a new word, activist, leveraging the arts for healing. Dr. Casey founded UnGUN Institute, focused on healing trauma through applied arts. Dr. Casey has found a way to connect and communicate through the arts. In 2020, she performed on stage in the Big Apple for the AARR Association to a sold-out crowd just days before the global pandemic forced a lockdown. While the pandemic slowed us all down, Dr. Casey still found ways to push her agenda for activism and community healing, and as such, her efforts gained recognition by the St. Louis Business Journal, featuring her on the cover as one of the top 25 most influential businesswomen in St. Louis. Dr. Casey's community and philanthropy efforts over the past 10 years have yielded numerous awards and accolades. However, the greatest reward of them all is realizing the positive impact that her commitment to engaging, connecting, and communicating with the community has had. Dr. Casey actively serves on 3 boards: Hope Creates, Gateway to Dreams, and Purpose Earth. We saw their video at the top of this program, all aligned with her mission to heal communities through the empowerment of recovery through expressive arts. In 2021, Marty K. Casey received the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award, signed by President Joseph R. Biden. Marty K. Casey, welcome back to World Unity Week. It's great to have you, and we are really going to dive in now to this very, very important discussion on healing the divide.
Wow, absolutely. Thank you, Ben. Ben, it's been more than just us connecting. We are family. And it is such an honor and a pleasure to be here today. When you called and you asked me to speak on this plenary, I knew that it was necessary. There was absolutely no way that I would say anything other than when and what time. And upon starting to pull that together in the framework of what we're talking about today, so I want to have you all interact with me a little bit. So the first thing that I want you all to do, if you have pen and paper near you, I need you to write down what this is called. It's healing the divide. And I'm going to give you 4 spaces, 4 pillars of where we are identifying where some major divide is in our country, as well as how that also impacts us globally. But it even divides us in our community, even in our own homes, even all the way down to self. So this is an opportunity for us to kind of do a heart check, and that's why it's called Come and Ungun Hearts, because we need to take a look in the mirror at ourselves and see where we are in dealing with this divide and how we can collectively come together to make a difference. In that video that you shared, that you saw, I want to quote Bruce. He said, "The things you value, you don't destroy." I need you to write that down. The things you value, you don't destroy. Now, when Ben called me, Ben sent me with a little bit of framework. He says, "Dr. Marty, we need to talk about what's going on with this gun violence as it continues to rise with all of the mass shootings that are in the media now. And we know mass shootings, this is not new. This is something that's been happening for a while now. We really come to know it on a collective level since Sandy Hook. And when you think about these mass shootings and you think about any type of shooting, when it hits home, right? When it hits home, hits your own backyard, that's when we decide to get involved. We go outside, we boots on the ground, we become these activists, we're moving, we're doing what we should always be doing. And that's what we're coming into this room today. And I've handpicked some specific experts to come to talk to you passionately about who they are, why they are, and what we are suggesting us all to do. That we may start with their stories, but we're going to end the action on us. Write that down. We're going to end the action on us. See, it is important that when we come into these spaces, we don't just hear what is being said, but you allow it to activate you to move and do something. And so when Ben shared this with me, he says, "Marty, one nation possesses 400 million firearms is a barrier to world peace. And my God, it is. 400 million firearms. Wow, think about that. Think about that for a second. If everyone picked up one of those firearms today and began to load it up and start shooting, we all would be at risk. I want you to know, don't wait on them to load the guns up, because we're already at risk. It's now, we're in the now season to do something. The panel before us, the powerful panel before us, talked about breath. The difference between life and death is breath. You either have it or you don't. I want to keep breathing. I want to keep living. I want to be safe. And I believe we all want the same things. It doesn't matter where we live, what our zip codes are, what we look like, where we grew up, what we believe in, who we know, how much money we have. None of those things matter. What matters is us healing the divide, because as long as we're staying divided, we got a problem and we're going to be at risk. So with all that being said, I probably won't say much more, because that's why my panelist is here today, and I'm excited to bring them forward. First, I want to introduce to you Patrick Carolan. And Patrick, after Patrick Carolan, you're going to hear from Anasuya Isaacs, and then you're going to hear from Mr. Bruce Carter. We first going to begin with Patrick to introduce himself. And Patrick, if you please would tell us how you come to be so passionate about speaking out and being an advocate against gun violence. If you can share that with us, and then we will bring Anasuya into the conversation. And thank you. And thank you both for wearing orange.
Well, thank you, Dr. Marty, for inviting me. Just as you had said that Ben asked you to do this, and of course you had to say yes. Well, when Marty called me and asked me if I would do it, I, of course, had to say yes. So happy and grateful to be here with you and with the other speakers. I'm Patrick Carolan. I'm a Catholic Franciscan activist. I've been an activist for the most part of my life. I ran an organization called the Franciscan Action Network in Washington, D.C. I co-founded the Global Catholic Climate Movement, the Faithful Democracy Coalition. And I've been involved in this kind of work, justice work, both from a faith perspective and also from I was a union president for many years in the 80s and 90s. So it's just, for me, it's a passion of doing the right thing. My parents are immigrants. They came to America in 1950. My mother would often tell a story of getting off the boat with nothing. She came to America with one baby in her arms, another in her belly, and to use an old Irish expression, not a pot to pee in. And from that, she, went on to raise 6 children and successful children. And so I always felt that I had to give back. I came from nothing, and I felt strongly that I had to give back. Guns are an issue that just destroy people's lives. I've seen this happen in neighborhoods. I've seen it happen in families, and we have to do whatever we can to really end this violence, this just constant violence of guns. And I'll leave it at that, and then I'll answer your question after.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I want to now move on to Anasuya, and she has in front of her name, she put hallelujah so that we know exactly how to pronounce this. So all together, choir, Anasuya, Anasuya. All right, we got it. Come on in, Anasuya. We cannot hear you. We're going to unmute you on our end.
Oh, okay, got it. Thank you. Hello, everyone. So yes, a little bit about me. I am the firstborn of an activist who was the firstborn of an activist who was the firstborn of an activist. So my family for generations has been fighting racism and oppression since the end of slavery. My grandmother's grandmother was born into slavery, and my grandmother's mother were babies at the end of slavery. So I want to have the context that it's not that long ago. that the oppression that was lived on this land by Black people as enslaved beings happened. So my family has been a big part of our family has been in service to the justice movement, the equality movement, the equal rights and movements, because we see all the ways that being oppressed as a woman, as a Black person, it happens in America. So I'm very grateful to have my mother show me the example as someone who walked out of school and joined the student doing sit-ins and the marches and took the risk of getting kicked out of school, which her parents had worked very hard to save money for her to go to. She took the risk of getting kicked out of school for missing summer school to be part of the movement. And she has the dog bites and the bruising still, the marks from the hoses. So I never knew that not being an activist was a possibility. It just, that wasn't even for consideration in my family. It's like, what role will you play? You get to choose how you play your role, but you will play a role in advancing equality and justice. And so one of the ways that I've done it is very quietly behind the scene. I've been working with women and children around owning their voice after their voice has been snatched by trauma, be it homelessness, be it domestic violence, be it rape, be it molestation, be it crimes. There's so many ways that our voices get taken from us, and trauma as it experienced shuts down not only our voice, but our sense of worth and self. And so we don't feel like we have rights or have the right to ask for rights when our voice has been taken. So that's where I've been focusing on around the world, in South Africa and Kenya and Senegal, in Germany, working with immigrants, working with refugees who are fleeing, and also just at a loss. So much trauma is experienced in the world. And that's where I've put my talents as an artist, as a writer, as a performer to work to teach people new ways to have language, till they get their own innate divine voice back. So that's a little bit of what I've been doing.
Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and jump right into this. The 4 pillars that we're going to be speaking from tonight in this first half, before we bring Bruce Carter forward, who you saw in that video. We're going to be speaking from the pillar of racial, cultural, gender-based, and spiritual. Racial, cultural, gender-based, and spiritual. Those are the 4 divides that UnGUN Institute has identified as being the areas of concern of why gun violence continues to rise. And we are here today on healing the divide. So we're asking you and everyone, including myself, all of us, to come together to UnGUN Hearts. So I am going to start with you, Patrick. I asked the question, and I would like for you to, if you will, give us a little bit of your backstory and how gun violence has affected you and or your family directly.
So let me start off, just talk a little bit about, you had mentioned 400 million guns in America. I think it's important to understand that according to Pew Research, only 32% of people in America have guns. So 32% of people in America own 400 million guns, and less than 50% of households have guns in them. So this is not everybody has a gun. There are people out there who would like everyone to have a gun. They keep saying, well, if everybody has a gun, then nobody will get shot. We all know that's crazy talk. So we have to understand that. I also think it's important, as we're talking about the issue of racism and guns, that we have to bring in the whole idea of, when we're talking about guns, the first thing that people talk about is the Second Amendment. Well, the Second Amendment gives me the right to carry a gun. Actually, if you really look at the history of the Second Amendment was written as a means to placate Southern states, because there was a whole divide between the Northern and Southern states when they were creating the nation. And part of it was over slavery. Southern states wanted to keep slavery. Northern states, this is going way back 1790s, 1780s, wanted to do away with slavery. And they reached a compromise. And the reason that the southern states were insisting on this right for guns, it was not a right for individuals to bear guns. It was a right, it says it very clearly, for well-regulated militias. And these militias in the southern states were militias that were used to hunt down runaway slaves. And so the whole purpose of the Second Amendment was to give the southern states the rights to continue these militias that would hunt down slaves. So there's that whole connection between that Second Amendment and slavery and just, hunting down slaves, creating militias so they can hunt down slaves. The other part of it is, we always hear from the NRA about how we can't do anything about guns at all. Yet in the 60s, when the civil rights movement was happening, and there was another movement, kind of part of the civil rights movement, the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers were not necessarily as against violence as Martin Luther King Jr. was. They weren't for violence, but they also understood the right to protect themselves and their right to own guns so they could protect themselves. And California introduced legislation that would limit the ability of people to own guns. And the NRA supported that legislation because the way the legislation was written, it was written so that it would limit Black people from carrying guns. Didn't necessarily limit me, but it would limit Black people. And in a number of southern states, those laws were already on the books that Black people couldn't own guns. And the NRA supported those laws to regulate guns. So you see that the whole issue of guns and racism is just so connected. And let me tell you a personal story about myself and how I became an activist, particularly around this issue. I've been an activist on gun control. And, I mentioned, I don't think I did mention, but I'm married, I have 4 children. And so I used to go to these meetings, these gatherings, to talk about gun control, these gatherings of activists. What can we do? What kind of legislation could we pass? And they would always ask at the beginning of the meeting to stand up or raise your hand if you've been personally affected by gun violence, if you have been shot or you have a family member who was shot. And I would look around the room and I would feel really bad for all those people. I would say, that's terrible. Look at all these people who's, a son, a daughter, a husband, whoever was shot. And then one day I was living in Maryland at the time. My son was living in Savannah, Georgia. And one day my wife got a phone call and she said, it was from a hospital in Savannah. And she said, your son's been shot. The hospital said, your son's been shot. He's in a coma. He's in critical condition. You need to get down here as soon as you can. So my wife and I, she called me at work. I came home. We started calling around to try to get a flight down. We were getting on an airplane, not knowing if when we got off of that airplane, if our son would still be alive or not, because he was in a coma and he was in critical condition. We got to the hospital and let me say that thankfully and blessedly, my son survived being shot. But we heard the story of what happened. My son was serving as a peacekeeper between 2 friends that got into a very bad argument. One of them pulled the gun out and ended up shooting my son. He was just trying to separate these 2 guys. When the police came, the police blocked the street, wouldn't let the ambulance down, and started questioning my son. They started asking him. His girlfriend was trying to cover him, put towels on him to stop the bleeding. They started asking him, was this a gang? Was this a drug related? What gang are you involved in? They started asking him all those questions. And then finally the ambulance came, they took my son to the hospital and they were able to get him, he did recover. So I share that story with you because one part of the story I didn't share with you is my son is Black. And I often think about that in terms of if my son was white, would the police have been asking him, was this drug related? Was this a result of gun violence? The police did absolutely nothing to help my son. And if he was white, they would have done everything they could have to help him, to try to take care of him. So for me, I then get to stand up now, not happily, but I get to stand up in those meetings and say, I've been affected. It's touched me personally now. And as I said, my son's doing good. He's a chef down in Savannah. So if you're ever down there, look him up. He'll cook you a good meal. But just understanding from a personal perspective what happened there. The guy who shot him was a friend. He had a handgun. He had a license to have the handgun. It had nothing to do with illegal guns or anything like that. It was a fit of anger, and he had that gun on him, and he pulled it out, and he shot my son. And this is a young man who, when he was younger, was at our house all the time.
Wow.
So a lot of the gun violence that we hear, we always hear about the mass shootings. We don't hear as much about that kind of gun violence as well, and how many people it affects and how many people are just lost by it. So I'll leave it there. But again, I just want to, we can't disconnect the issue of guns and racism. We can't do that. They're connected to each other. They're intertwined with each other, going back to the creation of the Second Amendment.
Wow, wow, wow. How powerful, Patrick. Now, you know, I know your story and I've heard your story several times, but every time I hear it, it impacts me the same. And that is one of the reasons that I asked you specifically to come and speak on this panel, because I want you all, you don't have to answer out loud. And this is not a criticism or anything like that. But again, we are ungunning hearts. So I just want you in this second to stop and think about when Patrick was telling his story, how you were feeling. And then when Patrick said his son was Black, did it alter how you were feeling? Did it change anything in your perspective or your heart? And the reason that I'm specifically asking that is because I work with a lot of the mothers of the movement who have had high profile cases of their sons and daughters being shot and killed specifically by police officers. And we all know that we need men and women of the law. I'm a firm believer of that. I have a lot of family members that would be unemployed if we did away with police officers. But let's just be honest today, and let's admit that we have some places where we need to heal the divide. And that is one of those places. And if there was anyone that could really speak to this narrative in that way, it's definitely Patrick. Because I guarantee you, you didn't see it coming, that he was going to share that his adopted son is Black. And for him to say to us today, he knows without a shadow of a doubt, if his son was non-Black, he would have been treated differently. We need to heal the divide. Thank you, Patrick, for being so transparent about your story. I know Bruce is itching to say something, but you coming up in a little bit, Bruce. I already know. And so now I want to bring us to that second space. So again, this is Healing the Divide, Come in Ungun Hearts. The 4 pillars that we're talking from today is racial, cultural, gender-based, and spiritual. Our next area is cultural. We just spoke about that, Anasuya. If you can kind of briefly, and I'm saying that sister and brother, because we want to make sure we have enough time to get everything here in the end. So Anasuya, if you can speak to that from a place of cultural, what are your thoughts on what you just heard Patrick say?
Well, you know, he didn't even have to say his son was Black for me to know his son was Black. And that's a sad thing that I could say that. Culturally, I just love the number 400 million guns, because 500 million, Lord have mercy, 400 years, Black people have been in this country. So if you look at it, for 1,000 guns for each year, 1 million guns for each year that we've been here. And I say that because this country was founded on domestic terrorism. This country was founded on domestic terrorism and oppression. So with the genocide of the Native Americans and the enslavement of African people, there's violence that's been sown into our foundation. And so it's important to say 1 million guns for each year, because there's a reason they're whites, are mainly the ones with the guns, who are accumulating the guns and using the guns in the way that has been used in a detrimental way for the masses, is because we have people who, and when the Second Amendment was founded, whites were the minority. They were, because some whites had hundreds of slaves. So that means, a family of 5 or 6 had hundreds of slaves. Well, they're outnumbered. So they need to outgun the numbers. So the need for guns to protect themselves against the Black majority, who have every right to rebel and revolt and lash out against their white oppressors, but didn't. But because they know in their heads that day is coming, they are always prepared for the day Black people and brown people and Native American people wake up and say, hey, this is wrong, what's happening to us. So even though that day has not happened and probably will not happen, they are prepared for the inevitability of retaliation, because our culture is founded on retaliation, oppression, fight, dominance through violence. This is what's been happening since slavery ended, with the lynching, with the bombings, with the mass terrorism. I mean, the very first sheriff, the very first people to wear a badge were slave catchers. So I just want you to get that. The very first people to wear a badge, the very first law enforcement in this country was the slave catcher. And that's the role they've been playing. Police brutality is keeping people in the jails. That's another subject. So culturally, we have a gun problem because we have a racism problem.
I want to move us right into this third pillar while you're right here with that, because those are some really fantastic points. And I want to say this, you guys, this is a hard conversation right now. This isn't necessarily the feel-good room. I'm sorry. I'm sure there'll be something to come up a little bit later that can get you back to a place of feeling good. But if we don't have these conversations, it's necessary, right? These conversations are so necessary. Truth is so necessary for us to speak that. But I want you to know, myself, along with everyone on this panel, we are peacekeepers. We are peacekeepers, and that is why we show up to do this work, and we show up in these spaces to speak the truth, to inform, so that we can move forward and bridge everybody together. We are aware of the truth. We will speak the truth. However, we do invite you to try to hear what needs to be said today. So Anasuya, where you right there, I want to move us to that third pillar of being gender-based, because you started to speak on that.
Yes, I did. And I was like, oh, okay.
I know. That's so great. I'm glad. So let's move you right into that. So when we look at, let's bring that framework back in again. Again, we're talking about 400 million firearms are in one nation, America. And that's a barrier to world peace. That's a barrier, you all. And we're peacekeepers. So when we look at this violence, where is it coming from? Where's those specifics? We seeing it come in from a racial standpoint, a cultural standpoint, and now gender-based, and then spiritual, right? When that's divided, when those things are divided, we have conflict. And where there's conflict, there's war. So Anasuya, please go ahead and jump in again.
Well, I was very fascinated by this whole aspect of mass shooters. And so I started doing research and finding that there have been people who have researched mass shootings since 1966. So as in looking at every single mass shooting since that time. And there are 4 things that they have in common. 1, they're men, not women. Secondly, 80% of the mass shooters are white men. 20% are some other race. So 80% are white men. The third thing they have in common is that 100% of the mass shooters and 100% of them are misogynists. They have a hatred of women. The fourth one is fatherlessness. So right now I'm going to speak to the gender-based violence, because at the heart of these mass shooters, these men, is someone who does not like themselves and doesn't feel empowered and respected as a man. So their inability to feel respected as a man, by whatever definition of a man there is, it usually is the definition is a violent strong man, a bully, machismo, one who has commands respect or fights for respect. And so we have men who see women as the root of all their trouble. And so the common denominator is that there is a hatred of women, and most of the actions they take before they shoot masses is either a rape or a shooting of a woman, domestic violence of a woman. That's just always just like the inciting incident. So when you have a culture that does not value, as Bruce says, when you don't destroy what you value, what we see is a consistent across the board lack of value for women and women's autonomy over their bodies and be able to control it. What these men want is access to women's bodies. So this is why rape is not prosecuted, which is why stalking is rarely prosecuted, which is why restraining orders don't work, because we don't have agency of our body. What they want, they take. And so when you don't have respect for the body, women's bodies, then we have the kind of crime that's happening. And so just to pick up on the culture and lead into what Patrick's going to talk about spirituality, is that when we have a culture that is where the central religious figure is a man on a cross, being persecuted on a cross, we have the worshiping of death and fear. If we were to change the central religious figure to a woman giving birth, we'd have a respect for life and for women, and we don't. So this is what's really important, is that we help men to honor the divine feminine in themselves and in other people, because lack of respect for women is driving this need to, this machismo. There's lots more I can say about it, but I will not. Pass it on to Patrick.
I was getting ready to say, I think that's a subject matter that we definitely come back to at a later date and really speak more about that, because I am a believer that what we feed our children is what they eat. It's what they eat. What we feed them is what they eat. And to that point, if we keep showing them war and we keep talking about war, war is what they're going to respond to. So we have to feed them love, talk about love, show unity. And I believe that peace can happen. And that's going to bring us to this next segue. Peace can happen on earth. We can live in peace. We don't have to wait to take our last breath and die to rest in it. We can live in it, and we can start today. So that brings us to our last pillar. Patrick, again, I'm going to give you the same thing. When you see this little pen come up, that means we're kind of running short on time. So Patrick, if you can, this fourth pillar here, if you can speak to it from a place of spiritual, where the gun violence is shifting, or how it's or where spiritually we're shifting, and that is causing the gun violence to continue to rise. Again, this is Healing the Divide. Come and UnGUN Hearts. And someone, I just have to say this, Patrick, someone in the chat asked, Marty, are you going to tell people how they can UnGUN? Because we have someone in here who's experienced gun violence, and they're going to need some of those points. Absolutely. You know, I'm not going to let you leave out of here without giving you some points and we leaving out on a good note. It sounds like the choir is singing a slow dragon song, but I promise you, we're going to be on a high note in just a second. But we had to get to this truth first. Patrick, please.
So thank you. I'm going to follow up a little bit on what Anasuya said about
Anasuya.
the whole
Anasuya.
Sorry, Anasuya. I apologize. Following up on that, when she talked about the misogyny, and we have to ask ourselves, where did that come from? We're not born misogynist. So where does that come from? And where in our moral and ethical values do we, and what we have to look toward is our theology, our theology of our faith. I'm Christian, so I look at it from a Christian perspective. And but you can look at it in other faiths as well. And two things about it, and particularly in the Christian world, one of the leading theologians in Christianity is a man named St. Thomas Aquinas, 12th century theologian, considered the all-time great theologian. And Thomas Aquinas said that masturbation is a greater sin than rape. So that should kind of give you an idea from a theological perspective of why we are living in a misogynistic society now. Our faith has taught us that from the beginning, from the very beginning. And, we can go back and we can look at our whole model, but whether it's Christianity, Islam, Judaism, it's all centered on this idea that we have to be good stewards of creation. And we have to dissect that a little bit. And what does that actually mean when we say we have to be good stewards of creation? And what it means is that we are at the top of the pyramid. And so we are the ones that are in control. We get to make the decisions of what's right and what's wrong. And then we can dissect it a little more and we can say, well, who's this we were talking about? And what's turned out is that in most of culture, the we is male. And in Western culture, the we is white male. So we've developed this whole theology centered around white males being in control, a theology centered around a misogynist. And so we need to change all that. If we're going to go forward, we need to reimagine our spirituality, our sacredness. We need to rethink it. I follow Franciscan tradition, Franciscan spirituality. St. Francis taught us that we're all connected. We're all part of the one. We're all interconnected with each other, all of creation, not just parts of it, but all of us. And that we're all supposed to be responsible for each other. And also, there was a man named John Duns Scotus, a great, great theologian, often both misunderstood and kind of buried. But John Duns Scotus talked about the kinship of creation, not being stewards over creation, but being kinship with all of creation. So in being in relationship with all of creation. We need to rethink our theology, our spirituality, our faith. We need to move away from this concept of, I'm only here so I can get there, wherever there is, to heaven. And we need to think a theology that says, I'm here so I can create heaven here. And I can create a heaven that we're all together, we're all one, we're all part of the one. And I'll close with just this two things. One is, I heard this expression recently, and I can't remember where I heard it from, so I'll just say it. And that it was that the love we receive in heaven is equal to the love we give away here on earth. And then the second one is, my old good friend Brian McLaren often says, do you think Jesus came with a building plan or an evacuation plan? Because all of our theology today is centered on an evacuation. We're going to go there. And everything Jesus talked about is building the kingdom of heaven here, creating here. So that's what we need to be thinking about. And that means, you know, and it means you have to feel uncomfortable. I liked what you said earlier about that, Marty, but I have a good friend, a priest, who would get up at the end of Mass and say, I hope I've made you feel uncomfortable, because if I haven't, I'm not doing my job. We don't transform in our comfort zone. We only transform when we get out of our comfort zone. So I kind of hope I've made some of you feel uncomfortable tonight. We all should feel uncomfortable enough that we're ready to take the challenge and move forward.
Wow, wow, wow. Amazing, amazing. I want to thank you both, Patrick and Anasuya. Amazing. Thank you for sharing your backstories. Thank you for giving your opinions. Thank you for doing the work. Thank you for being activists and active. Just thank you for being active in doing the work in the now. And please put in the chat how everyone can find you, what you have coming up, so that we can continue to follow you and support you. And I think it is necessary, but stay with us, because we bring in Bruce forward now. As you all remember the video that we saw in the very beginning, this was Bruce's brainchild, if you will, in Texas, where he invited me to come and to be a part of that powerful panel. And you will see in just a second, as Bruce introduces himself, he is a powerful man. I got a chance to meet him here in St. Louis after the unrest of Ferguson, when and he'll share more about that, of what brought him to St. Louis and all around the nation and the things that he does. But this, I have to say, he is truly a man of his word. And he is all about community first. And he's all about family, the one family. And that means all of us are one family. We all are a part of that family that he believes in. And when I saw this, he was someone that I said, anytime you need me, call, I'll come. And that is what we have been doing now for several years. Bruce, I want to welcome you to the stage, turning it over to you now, my brother, and thank you for being here.
All right, thank you. Just trying to absorb the notes that I've taken in from the previous two speakers. And I met Dr. Casey several years ago. I was on what we called a tour. I've done many tours across the country, as she kind of mentioned. And this one was a 40-day, 40-night tour called I Think Solutions. I took 4 different generations across the country to understand senseless violence and homelessness. Left Dallas, went to LA, San Francisco, Oakland, cut across to St. Louis. From there, went to Chicago, Detroit, Cincinnati, Baltimore, Memphis, Atlanta, Houston. And when I got to Houston, I don't know if you're familiar with the Tatiana Jefferson shooting, which was a young lady that got shot by a Fort Worth police officer. Her uncle was the driver of my bus at the time. I became the spokesperson for that family, and it put me in a place where I had furthered the relationships with law enforcement. I'm also the guy that did the 1-year anniversary when the 5 police officers got shot in Dallas because the organization struggled to get together. So based on seeing people divided who were supposed to be able to get together, it wasn't always about race. A lot of it was about power and what they wanted out of the deal. And so I created what was called Blessed Are the Peacemakers. And I modeled it off of Matthew 5:9 from the Bible. And I want to be called the child of God. So anything that gives me some points with a relationship with God, count me in. And I've taken that data in the last 5.5 years. I've spent 300 nights in hotels each year across the country doing different tours to understand America. So I have primary data. And I didn't do that as a person with a grant or with a company. I did it myself. And it allows me to make everyone uncomfortable. And so when I'm in your city, I'm going to make you uncomfortable if you have issues. Many cities I've went into, they always told me about, you don't know my city. Well, it's pretty much the same. Young Black men are killing young Black men at an alarming rate, and nobody wants to talk about it. And when I bring it up, people say white people kill each other too. And I say, well, I can bet the farm that a young Black man is going to kill a young Black man today, and I'm going to get paid on that bet. But understanding that, I decided I wanted to build a relationship with servants because that's what I believe I am. And that's where I met Dr. Casey when I was in St. Louis, met her and kind of watched her from afar, didn't talk to her after I left very often. But in last year, I was wrapping up Blessed Are the Peacemakers, and I looked to find servants from across the country. So I brought 150 people together from East, West, Midwest, and she was one of those, and she received the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. And it was in that moment after we did the video, we had the people in the room, people were crying, there were men, there were women, there were children, but people were still being killed for as little as stepping on someone's shoes. The mass shootings, yeah, they're bad, but there's a mass shooting that we don't talk about in the urban cores every day. And so the question becomes, how do you fix that? How do you make sense? I'm the guy that don't talk about race because I'm not going to let my skin color define me. You're not going to stop me from doing what I do. I'll give you more problems than probably anyone. So I don't worry about the race. That doesn't make it not exist, but it's not something I focus on. So I need help from everyone. I don't care what your gender is. I don't care what your skin color. I don't care what your age. In order for us to get to the point we need to get to, everybody has to play a role. So what I decided to do after taking these tours and walking in the city council meeting, public hearings, and finding out that many of our leaders had no value in solving the many issues that we're discussing today. So politically, I get very active. But even with the politics, it didn't matter who the leader was. We just couldn't get there because it's going to take people. So what I opted to do was create a space where I could take the information that I've learned over the years and transfer it. And so I will be opening up what's called PTI Trade School. The PTI stands for Pathways to Independence. And I will be doing a tour going to find my first 150 students across America. And I will bring those students to Texas on about 150 acres, and they will learn how to be good people. I think that if we can start producing good people and put them back in the space they came from, then we can start to create the difference that we desire. I can't take a young man who saw his mom get beat. You go to St. Louis, right now it's #1, but there's more unsolved murders probably than solved murders in the last 5 years. And what happens is you're going to have people that have multiple bodies on them because we're not taking killers off the street. And so what we got to do is we have to be able to take this new generation of individuals that we build as a unit, but we also teach them to solve some of the issues that plague part of the poverty. So they're going to learn what it means to have food security. They're going to learn vertical farming, how they can go back and be the store owners in their communities. They're going to also learn how to create positive music that can heal the soul, that can inspire versus destroying. They're going to learn real estate development. So it makes no sense to go into Baltimore or St. Louis and see buildings that are vacant and we have homeless issues or people that live on top of each other, and we can teach people how to own these blocks and do good. We're going to teach them how to develop technology, whether it's electrical issues that we have in Texas or other issues, because we have the talent. they're going to learn how to manufacture. There's no way that a place called America should be struggling because there is a war in Ukraine or something's happening over in China. So there's just so much that we need to do. And my favorite song, and I'm going to be done, Dr. Marty, my favorite song now, starting about 2 months ago, is by Alan Jackson, and it's called The Older I Get. And the older I get, I start to see things a little different. I don't move as fast. So I know that I need to transfer that so they can move. And it is going to take all the views. What Patrick said, I'm over here taking notes because it's important. I mean, I am a primary data guy, but I am also, my degree is in education. So when I get data, it's important, and I like to understand why it's brought from the perspective. When Patrick was talking about his son, I was saying in my mind, and remember, I could care less about race. I'm like, dang, they asking that white guy, why was he in the game? And then I'm like, oh, there we go. So there's just things that if we learn how to love people and show love, that we can walk in spaces and we will find people unbeknown that has the same spirit. And that's what happened in St. Louis. And that's that has happened as I've traveled the country. So there are good people out here that's willing to put the work, but so often we're so spread out in this space or in this country, in this world. And so hopefully as we continue to gather people, some of you all will be a part of the next ceremony that I do. And it's called the Weekend of Honor. And I just believe in giving people their flowers while they're living. And, God has been good to me. And I tell people I live by two things. That's faith and favor. And neither one has ever failed me to this point. So what I want you to do, as we are very close to releasing our school portion of the website, it's ptitradeschool.org. If you go there and just go to the contact, if you want more information, once we release the entire website and go live, you definitely can see it. And what we're going to do a pilot in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. I'm going to work within 14 counties, and it's called Prison to Six Figures. And some people may only hear the six figures, but what we're going to give this group of people who've been in this struggle, because in America, beyond death, going to prison is probably one of the worst things that can happen to you. And people will treat you like that. You can ban the box, you can do all these things, but if you were in prison for a crime and a similar crime happens in and around your community, the first thing the police do is say who in the community might have committed the crime, and they go back to the historical data. And so we need to give those people an opportunity to correct some of the damage that they cause, but also tell their story in a positive light so they can learn to see themselves better, and their own self-efficacy will take them to the next level. So that's what we're doing. And Dr. Casey, I appreciate you for inviting me, because I've learned some things today, and I'm going to chime back in throughout the week, the rest of the week. But it's always good to be around servants. And for that, I appreciate you all. And it was good meeting you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Bruce Carter. Now you see why he was also invited to come along with these other two powerful panelists. All three of you all have enlightened us on so many things. They're so passionate about what you do. And this is a place, Unity Earth is a place where we all are one and we are family. Ben Bowler, my brother, I just have to say that this is your creation. You help us to be who we are, to be able to come into this space and invite others to enlighten us. And I want to thank you. If everyone can just kind of hand clap where you are right now for being, because we love you, we love you, we love you, and we thank you. Sign Network, Becky, everybody that's a part. I don't even want to start naming names because we'll be here another 24 hours. But I just want to thank everybody that is a part of Unity Week and what we've been doing. Lisa, I see her on the screen. Lisa had an amazing event on Sunday for Juneteenth and shared her platform and invited me to be on there. And Lisa, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing. And it's just the beginning, because we do have to continue to celebrate each other. Celebrate each other in our history. That is so important. The last couple of things I want to share before we wrap. I just received this news right before I came into this room today. I was contacted by a producer out of LA, and they are flying me in tomorrow. I will be speaking at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. I fly out at 6:15 in the morning, speaking at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. on our gun violence issue and gun safety. And that this is, I guess I can send it to you, Ben, but it's 24/7. The People's Filibuster for Gun Safety is where I've been asked to come and be a part of that. Please send deep prayers over to me, as I am not necessarily, I'm one of those people, being an activist, I don't necessarily have the structure that I wish I had, that I see so many of you all operate from. I really come from a place of heart and a place of passion. And I, in this particular case, I don't want to prepare and think about what I want to say. I want to show up and say what God tells me to say, what he releases me to say. And so I just ask for your prayers on that. The last and final thing that I would like to mention is that, and I can also show you this a little, if you go to unguninstitute.com, I'm wearing a shirt that reveals the power source is me. I need you to get a shirt, because that's the truth. The power source is you. Someone asked earlier, we're going to give some, what is one of the things we're going to do to help people to ungun? That's what we want to do. We need to remind you that the power source is you. So I want you right now, say this with me. The power source is me. Point to yourself. The power source is me. Right.
Power source is
in your
me.
heart. Yes, the power source is me. Now, how can you be the power source? What are you tapping into daily that gives you that power that's needed, that allows your voice to come alive, that gives you the opportunity to weigh in and make the changes, the necessary changes that we need to see happen and we want to see happen in our world, our country, our house, our communities? What you're tapping into every day is social media. Did you share this yet? You have the power to do so. Have you shared this? Have you said to somebody, hey, it's some real powerful things in here I think you need to hear. I know the work that you're doing, and this lines up with who you are and what you're doing. I need you to see this. If you don't see it right now, jump in and watch it later. Share it right now. You have the power to do so. Social media is that powerful. You have the right to say what you want to say, how you want to say it. But all we ask is that if you want to be powerful, you lead with love. You lead with love. So before you just make a post and start speaking from a place of anger, in a place of disappointment, in a place of opinion, I want you to check your heart, ungun it, and lead with love. That second space that you tap into, that you have the power to control and maneuver and make some things happen, it's how you spend your money. What are you spending your money on? What businesses are you keeping employed and flourishing and building in our country that is supporting gun violence or guns or the NRA? Where are you placing your money? Your money is powerful. Stop, breathe, and think. That's an ungun solution. Stop, breathe, and think. Because when you think about, oh, wait, I don't really want to support because I believe they're behind. I better not. I'm going to go over here. Be intentional. That third and final place, and that's on the back of the shirt, these three pieces that I'm talking about right now. So the third part is, how are you spending your time? This was time well spent tonight, hearing Patrick and Anasuya and Bruce, and hopefully myself. Hopefully I've shared some things. We wasn't here to waste your time. We were here to value your time and give you more to be able to lean on later. You are the power. The power source is you. Today, I challenge you to plug in. And how I need you to plug in is that I need us all to be walking billboards. I want to see 400 million shirts across the world. For every gun that has been built and purchased and is laying around waiting to be used to hurt and harm someone in America and beyond, I know we're powerful enough to where we can get behind a movement and we can have these shirts everywhere that it'll make, if they got ready to pull out a gun, they'll see so many orange shirts saying, I'm the power is me, and they'll decide to do something different. I believe we can be our own billboards and speak truth and walk truth and live in truth. So I invite you to go to unguninstitute.com and purchase a shirt or two. You know somebody who owns a gun, ask them to purchase a shirt or two. The proceeds of those shirts that are being purchased will allow me and my team the ability to help to ungun those hearts that Bruce was talking about, coming out of prison, feeling hopeless. You giving a person a second opportunity. We say that when they serve their time in prison, but then when they come out, we still imprison them by not giving them a job, not giving them an opportunity, continuously talking about what has happened in the past versus helping them to completely heal and to show up and be better. So we want to make sure that we can serve those individuals for free. Hurt people hurt people. Healed people heal people. UnGUN Institute is in business to help others heal. Help me do that. Why don't you help me do that today and join the movement to make that happen? Thank you, Ben Bowler. Thank you again to my wonderful panelists, Patrick, Carolan, Anasuya, Isaacs, and Bruce Carter. We thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Marty K. Casey. It is a very powerful, moving, real, uncomfortable conversation. And Bruce Carter, thank you so much for your insights. And we want to hear more from you too, Bruce, as we go through these 99 days of peace through unity. Our sister Anasuya, wow, you're just bringing so much beauty and light and grace and truth and wisdom there. There's so much more to discuss. Patrick, we're going to be talking about, hosting regular conversations across these weeks between World Unity Week and building up to Peace Week in September. This conversation is just beginning, in the sense of where we are now, Marty. So thank you for bringing it together. Thank you for organizing it. Make sure everybody goes to unguninstitute.com and also ptitradeschool.org and to support the amazing work that's being done. We're right here with you. We want to support. We want to follow your lead. And, we want to be a part of the healing and ungunning ourselves, our communities, our nations. It's all together. Thank you for your leadership, Marty. As we close this plenary day 5 on the day of air, there's just a couple of things I want to share really quickly just as we close. Can
I interrupt just 1 second before you do that? Because I wanted the close and the end on you. There are a couple of people in the room that I would like for them to come forward because I want to just briefly introduce them. I saw Lorenzo Davis and I also saw Miss Jackson, Audrey Jackson. I don't know if they are both in the room or able to come on screen. Okay,
so sorry, Marty, who? Audrey Jackson?
Audrey Jackson and
Audrey
Lorenzo
Jackson's,
Davis.
Yeah,
there's Audrey. Okay, and then Lorenzo Davis.
Lorenzo Davis is not on video, but we can see if Lorenzo wants to start their video. But
okay,
you got Audrey.
Okay, Audrey. I want to just share this. Audrey Jackson, you all may or may not, and then you can look this up later. Her son, very high profile rapper in New York, Pop Smoke. Pop Smoke was gunned down and killed in California back in 2019, I believe it was. And he was doing a video out there and he was gunned down and he was shot. And Audrey also is one of the recipients, if you will, of Purpose Earth. And I brought Audrey into the space here, because of the work that she's doing is amazing. And I definitely want to make sure everyone connects with her and to hear the story of what has taken place and how she's moving forward, how she's ungunning. Audrey personally was ungunned by me and entered into a session of being ungunned. And so I'm very grateful for the work that we do here. Lorenzo Davis is a part of the UnGUN team. Lorenzo was also shot, and he was shot by a friend. He was paralyzed and he had to learn to walk again. Lorenzo is in his early 30s, and after being ungunned, after he was able to come back from being paralyzed to gain his mobility in almost 95% of his body, but there was a part on the left side that was not, it was still without feeling and without motion. After being ungunned, Lorenzo, if you will, I would like to share, he's 100% back walking and feeling again, because that trauma piece, that trauma hits us so hard in our mind, our body, and our spirit, we feel the aches and the pains, and it shuts down the nervous system and everything that's happening in our body. You would be surprised the trauma you're holding. So I highly recommend, you don't have to come to UnGUN Institute to get the help that you need, but I can't let anybody leave here without highly recommending that you go and talk to someone and see someone about any trauma that you may have experienced, that you think that you're coping with and you're living with. I'm telling you, it is also a barrier in your life. And I want to see everybody live their best life. So that's all that I wanted to say real quick. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I see so many faces that I know and I love, but I want to thank you. But Audrey and Lorenzo, thank you for allowing me to share that piece of your story. Ben, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Marty, and greetings to you, Audrey, and to Lorenzo. We're happy to hear that things are coming good after such a horrific turn of events. There are just a couple of things to share before we close today. Day 5 of World Unity Week. This was an amazing panel. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Anasuya. Thank you, Bruce, and particularly thank you to you, Marty, for putting it all together. We know every day the listening field is having some amazing sessions connecting with the nature elders, and there is some beautiful messages coming out of there. I just want to take a very short moment to share that, and maybe it's a good way for us to close today. And then we're going to hear Jonathan Granoff's 5th. He's doing 99 names in 99 days. We've got and this is a really perfect one for today. We're going to share that as well. So let's just have a look at the listening field, what they want to share with everybody here about air. How do I get to this place of peace through unity in 99 days? Today I became the cloud. What does this mean? Yesterday I looked at my flowers and took in their beauty. Today I am the flower. I am unity. Oh, that's beautiful. These are reflections that are coming from the daily listening field. And this was day 5. Linda DeHart, who's here with us in the room, was connecting with that spirit of air and bringing through that beautiful reflection. There's another one also before we get to Jonathan, which is, I love this one too. Marty, what are you seeing there? Are you seeing the pink one or the yellow one?
The pink.
Okay, great. How do we restore right relationship with you? Air, partnership. Partner with me to sound the vibration of love, trust, and change into places and spaces that need renewal. Well, I mean, everything we've been talking about today, talk about places and spaces that need renewal. Sound the vibration of love, trust, and change. And that's exactly what our speakers are doing with their incredible work. Each and every one of you is doing that in the world. So what a perfect message to come. And just to finally close this day 5, this is 99 names in 99 days. Our amazing brother, Jonathan Granoff. Let's see what today's name is.
Today's sacred name of the divine is Ya Salam, peace, the giver, the reality of peace. This is such an enormous part of the mystery of life itself and the creation of infinite galaxies, cosmoses, and lives, that it's just so clear that any explanation of this word, it's so core to understanding, well, everything, is just a grain of sand on an enormous beach. It's just one of so many wonders found in the pursuit of peace. Peace is the fulfillment of our journey, but it is the journey itself. People sometimes think peace is not active, but peace is active, but peace is also not active. It's also completion. So I'm going to just give one reflection on the pursuit of peace that has been meaningful to me to share, which is that real prayer opens the heart to love and compassion. And the evidence of love and compassion is caring for others. The evidence of caring for others is service. And the evidence of pure service, of service in which, as the Bhagavad Gita says, the rewards and losses in all is dedicated to God, is dedicated to the divine, of one surrenders the fruits of their labor, but accepts the privilege of serving in this school and this university, in this sacred place of creation. The consequence of serving with that purity is a clear conscience. And the consequence of a clear conscience is inner peace. And the inner peace that comes from the clear conscience awakens profound gratitude. And the consequence of gratitude is the acceptance of the blessing of grace. And in the acceptance of the blessing of grace is a state of prayer which amplifies loving kindness and compassion, which amplifies caring for and connectivity with other lives, which amplifies the privilege of serving God, and which amplifies the inner conscience awakened and the peace that comes from that, which amplifies gratitude and grace. And this cycle of going deeper and deeper into the fulfillment and the joy and bliss that comes from prayer, compassion, service, conscience, peace, gratitude, and grace is a peace that surpasseth understanding. So may we become the people of peace, and the way to peace is peace. All praises are to that great giver of life and the wonder of peace. 99 days, 99 days, 99 names, one unity. Thank you.
A powerful way to finish. Thank you, Jonathan. Marty, anything you want to say just before we end this?
No, other than the fact we know that it's not the guns that's really the problem. It's the hearts. Let's change the hearts. Let's change the hearts. Let's love more intentionally and on purpose.